Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the next episode of the Entrepreneurs Podcast. Today I have a friend, Amany. Assalamu alaikum, Amany. Welcome to the show.
Alaikum salam, Maruf. Excited to be here.
Alhamdulillah. And many of you may know, or some of you may not know, Amany. Amany is a co-founder of LaunchGood, but I'm sure somehow, some way you have heard about LaunchGood. They've been doing amazing service to the community the last 10 years. So out of respect, I just want to ask Amany to do a quick intro about herself and we'll dive in. Amany, would you please kindly introduce yourself in a
Yeah, absolutely.
okay.
So my name is Amany Killawi. I'm the co-founder of launchgood.com. And alhamdulillah, I have been with LaunchGood for 11 years now. We just celebrated our 11th anniversary, or
Mashallah,
this year we'll celebrate our 11th anniversary, inshallah.
mashallah. It's a long time to be stuck in a company unless you love
Yeah,
it.
yeah, definitely. Alhamdulillah.
Sounds good. Then we're gonna start into the questions slowly. Bismillah. So, Amany, like when you look back, this is the question we usually start. When you look back in your childhood, like what are the memories, early memories you have, you want to highlight, or you think you have there's an impact on you, who you are today, and what you do today? What are the things you would like to recall?
Ooh, okay. I mean, the first thing I remember, and most people don't know, I'm the middle of seven. So big family. And that does shape it does shape your childhood in so many ways because you've got when you're kind of in the middle, you just do your own thing in a way.
Hmm.
Um, I remember being outdoors a lot. That
Okay.
was a big thing we did. We'd spend all day outdoors playing, come back at Maghrib. We live near a masjid, so you can hear the adhan. So like when the adhan went off, we had to be back home.
Alhamdulillah.
Um, but mostly, alhamdulillah, very good, just active childhood. A lot of curiosity, a lot of playing.
Hmm.
And my parents weren't entirely well off, but we never felt like we were missing anything, if that makes
Alhamdulillah.
sense. Um, they
Alhamdulillah.
they they would prioritize our education over, for example, like renovations or things that we needed in the house.
Mhm.
But alhamdulillah, like it was, I think the biggest part of just being part of a big family is being part of a culture of this collectivism that, yes, you've got you as an individual, but then you're part of this greater good and
Mm.
this greater family. And there was always this like natural tension of making sure that everybody did their part in the house, from chores to community work to whatever it is, you still had a role to play.
I don't have seven kids. I have only three kids. My middle, my daughter always tells me, as you said, I'm the middle child. I'm neglected, So you know what you were saying is in a way you were let on your own. You did your own thing. Nobody kind of bothered you much, I
Yeah.
guess. Yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think it evolved too, like as we got older. One thing I appreciate about my parents, like we're Syrian. Most Syrians are usually in it, usually there's a doctor in the family. We have yet to have a doctor in the family for Syrians.
Mm.
But what I appreciate about my parents growing up is, one, I feel like my parents evolved. Like they evolved in terms of how they raised kid number one versus kid number seven. It kind of evolved over time.
It does.
Yeah, but also they just gave us space to do what we wanted to do.
Mm.
And as long as we're the best at it, that was, the most important thing for my parents was just, you know, not about any set career, but whatever you take a leap of faith on, try to be the very best at it.
Alhamdulillah. I like that approach, just guidance and just letting it you choose instead of forcing it upon you. Well, what would you remember? What would you remember at school? Is there any specific subject that kind of stood out to you? You kind of liked? I mean, we will come back to the what you guys do right now, but I just want to understand. Did you know or did you notice anything that you were good at or you really enjoyed at school and then it kind of followed that path, or how was it?
Yeah, I mean, I knew that I really enjoyed like social studies. I enjoyed Islamic studies. I
Hmm.
enjoyed um, those English courses overall. Like I enjoyed that. Um, uh, I didn't. I mean, I almost failed my art class. So let's put it that way. But
But
creativity can come in different ways.
that's
Um,
true.
so art wasn't the kind of strongest suite of mine, but overall, like I do remember enjoying more of the
So
social
your
side.
words, your words paint a picture.
What's that?
One of my friends, Outlandish, the Sambi has this lyrics. It says, "My words paint a picture."
Yeah,
Not.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah. But honestly, like it was more about I think for me, what was key was just growing up, I had some awesome mentors. And they were educators, they were
Hmm.
teachers. Like even before Launch Good, before everything, we had an organization called the Detroit Minds and Hearts Fellowship. And the teachers I worked with, the if I could say one thing they taught me is to critically think. Like
Alhamdulillah.
irrespective of like what I went to school for and what we did, it was like, look, if you can critically think, doesn't matter where you are, whatever you decide to do, what problem you're trying to solve, you're going to come at it from that angle. And so I just remember that being really powerful
Mhm,
for me. And then I was an Islamic school kid.
mhm,
Uh, so that like I do believe like that helps sort of shape that K-8 understanding, that foundation. And then in college, I took a lot of Islamic studies and Near Eastern studies, and that's where you start to really understand how much of like the Islamic history you don't know, and
mhm.
how much you need to know. And you approach it in a more critical fashion. Like so, those two things really came together. I would say
That's
in college.
interesting. So you said the mentors you mentioned. Mentors you said, was it when you were in your school, or was it in a later stage at the university?
At 14,
Mhm,
14 to 19, I had a great set of mentors that really helped shape, I would say, um, just I mean they were kind of like they expected us as like the youth to like launch the program, run it, everything. Like there wasn't this like um what's the word, like coddling. It was like, hey,
mhm.
like there was Sahaba that used to run that used to like lead armies, right? Like you could run this program. And so they would really push us in a way that was like, hey, just because you're 14 or 15 or 17 doesn't mean you
Hmm.
can't, that doesn't mean you can't launch this. So there was this, I don't even want to say empower. We were basically co-founders. So we helped co-craft this youth program.
Interesting. So this was a youth program outside the school. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly.
I
Exactly.
see.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I mean, basically like we would teach youth how to be organizers. So they would come in, we'd go through this program, 14-week program. And at the end of the program, they had to pitch their idea to investors
Hmm.
in the community who would then give them money. And, these are small grants, like of like $200, $500, but
Wow. So
but
how old were you? How old were you when you were doing this?
I'd say it started at the end of high school.
Hmm.
So maybe like I started getting involved at 14. Like at
Gotcha.
14, I started my first masjid girls basketball club. And
Nice.
then around like 16, 17, we began this DMH youth program. And alhamdulillah, we ran that for like 5 years. That was in many ways like the first startup.
This is what I'm saying. It
The,
was a
the
mini
first,
launch good before launch good, you know?
yeah, it was like the first nonprofit. And that's actually how I
Mm.
met Chris. Because we needed to crowdfund
That's amazing.
to make that happen.
I was going
And
to ask that story. I was going to add the story. Now it
yeah,
makes sense.
yeah, I
Okay.
was 17, I think, at the time when I had met Chris. Well, we're 8 years apart in terms of age, and so they assigned him to work with me, and that's how we met. I don't remember much of that, honestly. I just remember Chris was like this guy doing some cool stuff in the community, but um, youth organizing and this program led me to crowdfunding, which led me to really co-found Launch Good with
I
Chris and
really
Al.
want to dig deep on this when we come to the launch good story. But before that, I want to just quickly cover the university that period, if you don't mind.
Yeah, yeah.
So what did you end up studying after school, Amany? Did you study at university?
I did. So I actually studied social work. My background is in
Makes
social work.
sense. Okay, social work.
Part
Yeah.
of part of that was because I felt like social work was the closest to like a prophetic career in the sense
Mhm.
that I loved the Islamic framework, and I wanted to go into a career that gave me that flexibility. And this is something that, even before that, by the way, like I didn't forget to share this when we were talking about growing up. We don't have extended family here, so like some of my family was overseas, some of my family was my immediate family was in the U.S. But like many immigrant families, you're trying to figure out where's home. Do you
That's
stay
true.
here? Do you build there? Where do you build? Where's home? So at one point, my parents decided to uh, purchase a one-way ticket to Syria, and that's
Oh,
it. Like we're going to relocate there. But subhanAllah, the day of our flight back, the day of that one-way trip or that one-way ticket was 9/11.
No
And
way. Wow.
yeah, that, I mean, we don't even know what happened because we woke up and, before smartphones, we called up a friend to borrow their scale and they're like, go plug in your TV and see what's happening. And subhanAllah, that actually changed the whole trajectory for us.
Wow.
So we ended up staying in the US. I went to I went into school of social work. I knew I wanted to give back because I felt like
Mm,
living in the West, you have such a unique opportunity
that's true.
that you don't have in other places. And so social work was one avenue for that. And subhanAllah, that led me to organizing, which led me to crowdfunding.
That was your expression of who you are, yes, in some case, right? In some way or shape or form. Okay, makes sense. I mean, university, you choose social studies, makes sense. So now I want to come back to that story you mentioned. So I was going to ask you how you guys did meet up. It makes sense. So you were doing something you enjoy, and this is when you meet Chris, right? Did he start at that time launch good or not yet?
No, at the time he had what you'd call an MVP, like a
Oh,
consulting company that supports with crowdfunding. And
mm,
it was like a basic Weebly page where, you could sign up for crowdfunding services
mhm,
or sign up if you have a crowdfunding campaign, but really it was
mhm,
a consulting company. And this was 10 years ago. There was very
mhm.
few Muslims in the crowdfunding space. Like you
That's
had just
true.
started to see the emergence of like Indiegogo and GoFundMe and Kickstarter.
That's true. Omar was there or what came later?
Amany came after,
Okay.
and it's not necessarily like, gosh, 11 years ago, it feels like a blur. Uh, Amany came he sort of started before me in the sense of helping design the first iteration of
Mm,
the site, but
yeah,
then came as a co-founder officially, I believe like a year later.
sounds good. Like, look, so the journey, like, I mean, since then, correct me if I'm wrong, since then, probably the last 10 years, you've been mainly your focus has been launch good. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Right? Um, I've had the Chris on the show. He told me he said a story. Why don't you share your, I mean, not everything, but the highlights. Like, how do you see this, the whole thing develop? I remember you were at one point you were chief product, not chief operating officer, right?
Yeah.
You did it for a while, but now you're doing a new role. Tell us that journey, and then we want to go deep dive in a little bit some of the things what you are doing, and also how does a launch good company evolve, inshallah, in the new products and sub products, etc., etc. How do you guys see the future?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, um, to take you back to that first kind of interaction with Chris, and
Mm-hmm.
then, along that journey, um, subhanAllah, like I don't think I don't think you wake up necessarily decide, at least for me, I didn't decide necessarily I wanted to be an entrepreneur or, you kind of I was going where I was growing. And I always tell
Mm-hmm.
people that like go where you can grow, right? Like work on what's interesting, what's valuable, what you feel is really pulling at you. And so when Chris invited me, again, there's very few Muslims in the space. He invited me to join him on the journey. At first, I said no. I said no twice, actually, because I was like, well, I got this other stuff going on, and I'm working on this nonprofit. I'm working on this study.
Mm-hmm.
But he was persistent, and he had a contagious vision.
He knows. I have to give it to him. He knows how to hire people. Wherever
Yeah,
he's going, he's always hiring. I've been to a
y-
couple of events with him. He's always like hiring people. I like that.
yeah, and that's, I mean, and you're always hiring as a founder. You're always looking. You're always trying to find the right person for the right stage at the right point. And so I took a leap of faith. I took actually a gap year. I was going to go for my master's in social work. So I took a
Mhm.
gap year. I'm a big fan of gap years. And I said, you know what? Uh, you know, why don't I have nothing to lose. Let me take this leap of faith. But I also prayed istikhara for a year. So people kind of
For a
struggle with,
year, subhanallah, to take
but
a
I was,
decision on this.
yeah, but people get
That's
confused by
beautiful.
that. The decision was still there. Like I was
Hmm.
showing up every day.
Hmm.
But in terms of like, okay, where will this go in a year?
I
I was
see.
praying istikhara for a whole year in terms of, Ya Allah, put me in a place, root me in a place that is going to bring benefit to me and to the community. And I
Subhanallah.
was working on multiple projects. Launch Good was one of them at the time.
I see.
So
I
the
see.
istikhara was like, okay, where should I go deeper between the different things
Hmm.
I'm working on? So I took a leap of faith, prayed istikhara, kept building, and a lot of people get stuck between like, do I build, do
Hmm.
I aim, do I shoot, how much thinking do I do, when do I take a
Hmm.
leap of faith? And obviously there's a balance. Like I worked on LaunchGrid for a year before I went full time.
Mhm.
Uh, but at the
It was a
same time,
transition period. Transition
yeah,
period.
transition period, exactly. But at the same time, like you don't know until you try. You have
Yeah.
to take some sort of leap of faith. Everything is
Yeah.
a leap of faith. And I think sometimes people are scared to pull that trigger.
Mm.
But eventually, like the dust settled. That's what I feel like Istikhara feels like. It feels like a
Yeah.
sandstorm in your heart, and then it like settles, and you're like, all right, this is what I got to do. And so
Alhamdulillah.
I went full time. And that's where I was like, okay, every minute I'm not spending on this is an opportunity lost. Like that's when I started to feel like I've got to go full force.
Mhm.
And subhanAllah, like uh, when you're building something, you're a little bit naive at first. It's good. Like we thought the only way to build a company was to go to the Bay and pitch to investors. And so we went to the Bay and we're like, all right, we're building this crowdfunding platform. Post 9/11, of course. Like what people are like, what are you thinking? All of this, right? And people weren't ready to take a bet on us, let alone the Muslim community.
It was a bad
Um,
timing. I think they were saying like, okay, you gotta do sponsor more of this. What's happening right now? I
yeah,
guess.
and to be fair, like this was back in gosh
Mm.
2015, so you can argue it was like
Oh, it was later. Yeah, this is later
it
though.
was
Okay,
later.
okay, okay.
It was later, but like it's those aren't things we thought about. We just wanted
Mm.
to build community and we wanted to do it online. And through that, you build solid compliance, you build all these other components. And subhanAllah, like, we raised $0. We were actually terrible at our own fundraising in the beginning. But we got an angel investor who then gave us $10,000. And we grew that $10,000 to where we are today and have it over half a billion raised worldwide for incredible
Alhamdulillah.
projects, across the world, whether it's
Alhamdulillah.
you know, um, humanitarian to children's books to apps, uh, all the whole kind of plethora of amazing community projects. But yeah, that wasn't easy, but that's how that initial journey started. And over the years, it's taken so much in terms of from one level to the next to get to where we are today.
So just quick update, right, for those who may not know the internal work. So I mean, LaunchGood has been, as you said, soon it's going to be 11 years, inshallah. And like, where are you guys in terms of the team? Like, how big are last time I think I was asking Chris, it was over 100, right? Inshallah. I mean, it's still the case, or maybe it's even more at this point. And how many offices you guys have? It must be a huge operation. It's not easy
Yeah,
to
I mean
manage all this.
we're yeah, so I believe we're about 65 full time, and then you have, because we're a seasonal business with Ramadan, you've got folks that kind of come in and go. That puts us at
Interesting.
100 in terms of Ramadan and just being
So you
able
guys
to
have this
like,
Ramadan uptake, and then
yeah, they're all, exactly, exactly. So we have a lot of like great seasonal talent that comes in, gets to be part of an awesome company, an
alhamdulillah.
awesome culture. The first time they work for like a Muslim company, for some parts of the year, and then at the end of the fellowship, they're able to go back to whatever day job they have. And right
Interesting.
now we've got a team in the UK. The UK is like our second biggest market, and Canada, and of course
Yeah.
APAC.
IPAC. Okay, sounds good. And then one of the things, since I know, as I said, I've known the launch code, alhamdulillah, for a while. So I know enough to say that if I remember correctly, just correct me if maybe I'm not on the right thing. Because when the launch code started, right, you guys had an idea of something like a Kickstarter for the Muslim
Yeah, we
community.
pivoted. Yeah,
Yeah,
we
right. Can
did.
tell us
We did.
more about that. What was the
We
learning and
did.
how did it happen?
So initially, we wanted to be the Kickstarter for the Muslim community. Like we
Mm,
wanted to support creative and entrepreneurial projects. But subhanAllah, we quickly realized we have to pivot. Like that wasn't going to be enough to sustain the business. And
yeah,
charity and humanitarian giving is still a big part of who we
that's
are as
true.
a community. And so we expanded it. So LaunchGood really is like all of that. It's
Mhm.
you can launch a creative project, you can launch a humanitarian project, and you can also launch an individual project for someone who might be struggling or recovering from an injury. So all of that I think encompasses the vision. I mean, for us, it's at the end of the day, LaunchGood was about inspiring the Muslim community.
Mm.
And inspiration comes in more than one way. It comes in multiple fashions and forms.
Absolutely. So yeah, it was I think in a simply put, right? It started as a Kickstarter for the Muslim community, but then it expanded Kickstarter
Yeah.
slash GoFundMe, right? Or something else. I don't know how you guys define
Yep.
it.
Exactly.
Alhamdulillah. So I want to ask you the next things look, not I think in our community, but in general, right? in general, I believe, because it's not easy for Muslim. I mean, it's not usually generally it's not easy for women, right? But especially Muslim women to be in a working environment, especially like not only that, but also in your case, it's not a executive role. It's not just doing your thing. It's gonna you've been chief operating officer for so many years, but even
Yeah,
now you're working. I know recently your family expanded. Tell us
yeah,
about the challenges of as your role, your work as a Muslim lady, Muslim woman who's
yeah,
doing all of this, still having a family. Like the reason I'm asking this question is I cannot comprehend it. For honestly, I would never comprehend. But the reason I'm asking this question, I think that's important because there could
yeah,
be a lot of Muslim sisters who are listening and watching this, right? We want to
yeah,
tell them, hey, I know it's not easy, but it's doable. And we want to
yeah.
hear how it's doable from you, if possible.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And some of that, it's a negotiation even today. So there's sort of two phases. There's like before you have kids and when you have kids, right? Uh, the first 10 years of Launch Good, um, I was married, alhamdulillah, but I didn't have to worry about, children and logistics. That's a game changer. So that made it easier. Like I'm
I see.
solo, I can travel, I can come, I can
Mhm.
go. I also, and this might be a little bit controversial, but I actually believe initially it is easier for Muslim women to become entrepreneurs than men. And the reason why I believe that is because as a community, we don't expect them to necessarily, not always. I mean, this if you're a single
Mhm.
mom or most houses, it's a two-income household, but culturally, we generally don't expect Muslim women to basically support the family financially. So there's less pressure on you in the sense that you have to be in a career or a space that's going to pay now, today. Like you're gonna be able to take home a paycheck today. So I think that helps. I actually
Mhm.
think that that's an opportunity for a lot of Muslim women to delve into a space because they don't have to worry about that initially.
You mean the expectations are lower? They don't expect you to. This is what you're saying.
No, you're not expected to basically bring home the bacon. You're not
Yeah,
expected
that's what I'm
to
saying. Yeah,
financially
yeah.
support the family,
So it's
which
okay
means
for you to fail. It's okay. You don't have to
it's
worry about it.
okay
Not
for
like a
you to
man.
fail.
Man
Yeah,
has to
it's
bring
okay.
bread.
Yeah, work on that cute startup. It's okay. Like it's not even, you know what I mean? Like there isn't that space to,
Mm.
and alhamdulillah, like I didn't have that. I didn't have to worry about that either for my family. Like in general, my parents were very actually pro business. Both of my grandfathers had their own businesses on both sides of the family. So there was this understanding of being able to own your own narrative and own your own history and work,
On your own story,
uh,
yeah.
your own story exactly. But that I do think is something that's an advantage. Then it's your own personal risk appetite after that. Like
Mm.
you have the risk appetite to do this. People don't know this, but for the first 3 to 4 years of launch, we didn't take a salary because it's
How do you
bootstrapped.
guys survive though?
So when we lived in Detroit, at least Chris and I lived in Detroit,
I
which is
see.
very cheap.
I see.
Like the cost of living, you can launch amazing companies today in a way that you couldn't before. There's a
That's
lot of
true.
tools. The costs are much lower and cheaper, and you don't have to be in the fancy Bay Area. You can
That's
just
true.
be in good old Minnesota, good old Detroit. So that helped. But we also had side hustles. Like I worked part time, Chris worked part time as well. So it was very frugal
For the first
operation.
2 years or 3 years.
Nope, first 3 to 4 years. So I went on payroll
That's a
first.
lesson. 3 years at least. Wow. No
Yeah, yeah.
salary.
I went on payroll first, and then Chris. Keep in mind, we had part time jobs. Like it wasn't like
I know, I know, I
we
know.
in, but it's not like it wasn't like we could make this our day job. So that's the first thing. I think that's a little bit easier for women.
Mm.
Uh, Now I'm in a different stage. Also, who you marry matters, so that's the second piece.
That's what
So
I was
like,
going to ask you, like,
yeah,
right?
if first you're solo, if you're solo, it's easy. You can come and go. Then your spouse has to be extremely supportive of
An
this because
understanding,
and
especially if
understand.
you're
Exactly. I mean, my husband was actually one of the. This is not how I met him. I should clarify, but he's one of the first few. He was one of the early supporters of Launch Good. He was one of the first donors. I remember even interviewing him for. We were doing like donor research, but we met doing youth work. Actually, the same youth work of that organization that then was how I met
it gives
Chris.
you so much barakah.
Yeah,
Your
exactly.
work, your husband. I mean, what else do you want? You're settled.
So that matters too. Like somebody who's very supportive of this,
Hmm.
but also you have to make sure like you don't overdo it. Like it's very
Hmm.
stressful to run a company. Your home should be that sacred space where you can kind of recharge. So that's the second piece. So first, like take a leap of faith because you're not necessarily expected. If you don't have to worry about that of like for I think for a lot of women, you're supporting in other ways at home. At least for
Mm.
me, it was my younger sister's siblings were taken care of. It was cooking, it was supporting my parents. That was my contribution, right? That doesn't
Mm.
go away. So it's like you've got to balance that out plus school, plus whatever you're building.
But it's doable.
And it's doable. It's doable.
Alhamdulillah.
And if you know, they say if you want to get something done, give it to busy people. So you've got those two things, and then a spouse. Now I'm in a different stage, to be honest. I'm negotiating it right now. I've got
Mm.
a young one. My son is almost a year old. I'm doing my first trip tomorrow, traveling with him. So you can ask me how that goes
In the
in a
next
few weeks.
episode. Yeah, maybe.
Exactly. But it's more now about less. I mean, one thing I'm realizing, it's not about how you work, it's just about working smarter, especially with
Mm.
kids. Like you just have less time to get things done and you've just got to get it done and you try to be as efficient as possible. And then you're just prioritizing. I know for me, a big game changer was like we live with family, so that helps. And then we also had to hire a nanny just to be able to get certain blocks of time
Mhm.
to be able to focus and get work done. But even as we speak, like right here, I've got my playpen. This is like my son's playpen. So it is going to be a balancing act. But one of the things I did coming back from maternity leave is I actually switched into a new role. So for 10 years, I was our chief operating officer. Alhamdulillah, I was able to like be part of every component, every department of LaunchGood. And I felt like it was time to just be more at a strategic level. And that works more with the lifestyle now with a young son. So being able to, if you have the ability to craft that or change that or shift that, that's the best time to
Chief
negotiate that.
operating officer is the one who's putting out fires. That bullet style writing, it's crazy. Like you are in the middle
Yeah,
of everything. So I
yeah,
understand why you've kind of taken a step back and say, hey, look,
yeah. I put
yeah,
in my time. I put in like 10 years, so
yeah, that's enough. That's enough. So tell
I
me,
was ready.
yeah, tell me about now we got transition the topic from LaunchGood as a main company, but now you're taking a new role. Tell me about your new role, and also tell me about what you are working on, and if you whatever you can share, like what are the sub products, and how do you guys see the LaunchGood expand to different sub products or subcategories, whatever that is.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So right now I lead Launch Good Labs. Labs is a place for us to explore and uh, discover what the next expression of our brand and mission will be. At the heart of it, Launch Good is about uplifting the ummah.
Mm.
Today we do it through crowdfunding. Today you see that happening through crowdfunding. Through each campaign becomes a chapter in this global storybook of who we are as a community, right? A very generous, loving community. But beyond that, what does launch could look like beyond crowdfunding? That's essentially the question that we want to answer. And so we're experimenting with different ideas. One is a super app. It's very popular in certain places of the world, less so here, I'd say, in the West. But could there be like a super app that brings together a digital nation of Muslims that combines the best of Muslim products
Mhm.
all in one place? It's one thing we're toying around with. There is, of course, MuslimHub.co, where we're trying to bring the best of products to the Muslim community or help you discover those products and through that nurture the Islamic economy. And then there's of course what I would say the crown jewel is working on a payments company,
Mhm.
and this is exciting because we face this own challenge with LaunchGood where almost three times we pretty much could have died because we had a banking while Muslim issues or a payment processor that automatically just shut us off. And in all cases, the most frustrating thing about this was that in the 11 years of working, we've never had any OFAC issues. Our chargeback rates are extremely low, like they're to die for in terms of the rates. We haven't had any actual issues, but what we deal with as a community and what Muslims worldwide deal with, of course, is this idea of perceived risk. That
Sure.
what if something happens?
Yeah.
And so that's led to a lot of challenging payment partner relationships.
Hmm.
I mean, it was so bad, like I had a list of breakup songs for each payment processor because of like how bad it got. Like right before Ramadan, we'd have this issue with a payment processor.
They would do it
And
right before Ramadan.
more than once, it was right before high season. Like we'd only have a
Wow.
couple of weeks, sometimes maybe a month if we're lucky to onboard and
New one.
new payment partner. Alhamdulillah, we have great relationships now, great payment partners now that's helped us stabilize. But to us, it was like, okay, if you can't beat them, join them, right? Like
Yeah.
if we as a community can't control our own rails, if we can't
Yeah.
control our own payment rails, then what's the
100%.
point? Like everything, anything you build, any platform, a super app, whatever it is that you're building in the Muslim community, you need to be able to move money and you need to be able to capture the transaction. And if we can't even do that, then it doesn't matter what platforms we
I
build.
agree.
So this is like the
100%.
pipes. This is like the critical like infrastructure heart pipes.
100%. So what I usually like to do is I just try to like give an analogy. So with a payment platform, what you're building is something like a Stripe, probably, right? But for the Muslim Ummah.
Like
And
a
the
stripe that
Muslim,
doesn't discriminate.
you know,
Which
and
is
then
caveat.
and then the by the way, so this new payment platform will be open for everybody.
Yeah, it can be by Muslims for all. I mean,
Okay,
we're still
cool.
sort of ironing it
But of
out.
course, of course, it allows some of the categories, which doesn't like gambling and all this
Yeah, of course.
crazy
Yeah,
stuff.
that's a
Yeah,
given. That's a
yeah,
given.
yeah.
And most, by the way, most payment companies, those are considered high risk anyways. Like they don't
Hmm.
necessarily want to even onboard those industries.
Okay. And then the Muslim Hub, I would say probably it is. I'm trying to think a good analogy. Good. What would be the Muslim Hub? Would it be like? What do you think it would be? Is
I
like
mean,
a
think of like a virtual mall. That's one way to
mall?
put
Oh, I see.
it. It's a virtual mall. You walk in and it's like, here's all the amazing products by Muslims. And you can go, you can go to children's section,
Cool.
you can go to modest fashion,
It's like a
etc.
directory of
Yeah,
businesses, right? Gotcha,
exactly.
gotcha, gotcha. Okay.
Exactly.
And then the first one was you mentioned it was the super app, and that's probably. Do you guys think like a WeChat for
Yeah,
Muslims?
yeah,
Okay.
potentially. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And
Okay.
it's going to be interesting in terms of adoption, but it's you don't know until you try it. I mean, that's
Yeah,
where it's
that's
the
true.
exciting, where you can
That's
have a
true.
wallet,
That's
um,
true.
even connect the financial ecosystem to that in terms of
Absolutely.
Amana, mutual funds, whatever else it might be.
I was in Doha. I was in Doha, right, for the event, and that's where we discussed with Omar the super app. I told him like I'm telling you now as well. Like I'm maybe you can call me skeptic. Like the super apps, it's very tough to pull it off, right?
Yeah,
Very very tough unless you have an advantage. Like everybody gives to China, yes, because China is closed, right?
yeah.
That's why the WeChat grew like out of proportion. You can do a lot of
Already,
things,
and
right?
yeah, you don't have options,
There you go.
basically.
There you go.
Yeah,
Because you have this,
yeah,
I call them advantage, right? Monopoly, whatever it is. But here that look, like I wanted to work, but at the same time, like it's gonna be like instead of trying to do a lot of things, great, right? Which is difficult to do. And as you look at the Western market, open markets, they do one thing really, really well, right?
yeah,
That makes sense. But again, look, again, you guys pulled off launch good. Why not another super app? Like I'm just stating my kind of the take on this. And I mean,
yeah,
I get a lot of pitches every week. They want the super app and said, okay, good luck. But
yeah,
again, it is what it is. But maybe unless Omar is pulling up something new trick, which I'm not sure. I don't know how he's going to pull it up, but
yeah,
I'll be looking forward, inshallah, for that thing. But payment definitely needed. That's no question about it. The mall idea, as you said, the super, that's interesting. And I think there will be more people coming because there's a demand for this. We know
yeah,
that because we need to know because especially what's going on right now, right? We need to
yeah,
understand the players. We need to understand the who is doing what. That speaking of
yeah.
the payment, I agree with you 100%. It happened to you and happened to a lot of charities I heard.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, there's studies I mean, the Banking on Muslim study by ISPU shows that Muslim businesses and nonprofits are 2.6 times more likely to have their account closed down, to have transactions flagged, to have transactions rejected. I mean, there's real data, and we had funded and supported the study because the stories are there, but no one was collecting the data.
yeah.
So and even Senator Elizabeth Warren here in the States called out a lot of banks around this. So we know for a fact it's happening, but now it's like, great, how do we change the equation
Hmm.
where people see our community as opportunity and not just risk? And I think the payments company is the answer to that, because if we
That's
can
true.
aggregate our volume in a way that changes the equation for banks, because banks do risky things all the time. They
Yeah.
bank risky customers all the time. But if we can change that equation for them where it's like, wow, there's all this opportunity, billions and billions of dollars in the Muslim community, now we're more likely to get banked and supported. So I believe
Absolutely.
also we have to tackle it economically, not
That's
just
true.
through advocacy.
You know what? And this one probably we cannot go deeper on this topic, but out of this episode, there is so much to discuss, especially on this topic, because it goes back to there was this book. I don't know if you read about this. It's called Change Agent.
I think I heard of it.
You heard of it, right? It's very interesting. So, in a nutshell, I mean, on
Who's
Launchpad, right?
the author on that? Who's the
I don't know the author. I'm not good with the names, but I know the book title. But I'll share with you the
Okay,
thing.
I'm usually good with the author, not the title, but
Oh,
okay.
really? So, but I'm better with the story. I will tell the story in a nutshell. The story is that this is the history of a Black community in America and how
Yeah.
they are tackling it. This brother, the guy who did this, has been working. He worked at different consulting companies. He helped a lot, but now he's in retirement. He shared his story. How,
Mhm.
as a Black community, are trying to change it. I mean, you can change the Black to Muslim, or it doesn't matter. Minorities, right? How the minorities can tackle in a society. And I think there is a lesson in that for all of us in the Muslims in North America, but also in general. Like we are, even though we are like 2 billion people, but we are, I would say, in the global market, we are minority. In most of the countries in Europe, we are minority. You know that. And besides this narrative, right? You've been on this wave like with us. Well, I mean, we've been on this wave as well. The last, I would not say, would you agree, last 20 years, especially last 10 years and 5 years, would you agree that we are seeing this wave of new Muslim consumers that's coming
Yeah.
with the new habits, right? And how they buy, they are voting by their money, where they're going to put them. That's why I think the Muslim Hub becomes very important, right? People say what to put and what to support. But at the same time, Amani, that's what I'm saying. There's so much to discuss on that topic. I'm just going to give the highlights. There are 2 billion Muslims in the world, right?
Yep.
Do you know how many of them are unbanked?
I know, I don't know, but I know that there's a pretty sizable majority.
Yeah,
Uh,
40%,
yeah,
800 million.
yeah.
And these people are unbanked today. Do you know
Yep.
why the reason is?
I mean, I assume the systems, like most of these will probably leapfrog. Like if you provide a good banking opportunity, right? That can you can actually do KYC, you can do all of that.
Most of this, I agree. The most of these banks, they don't even take on this because majority of
Yeah,
these people, they are poor, right? It's not
yeah.
profitable for them. Number two
It's
is some of
cash.
them
Cash. Yeah.
they live far away from the bank, rural areas in Asia and Africa. And what you mentioned, the leapfrog, very interesting idea. With this one, I'm going to end up my point. I'm going to move on to the next question. So what happened, I like learning these patterns, right? If you look at the pattern in Africa, do you remember that if you know how the internet got there? Like in US and Canada and Europe, there was a landline first, then become the modem, then become this.
Yep.
But Africa said, screw this,
Phones.
we cannot afford
Yep.
it. They just went to the mobile, right?
Yep.
And I
Yep.
believe this is gonna happen to those unbanked people, in Muslims and non-Muslims. They're gonna jump from whatever it is to the existing, to the new
Yeah.
technologies. And I believe, like, that's my personal opinion, just don't quote me on that. I believe that solution, as much as we want, doesn't come from the web 2. It's going to come from the web 3. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not sure how much you know in blockchain. That's what I'm saying. I don't want to go into discussion right now.
Yeah,
We can
you're
discuss it
taking us
later.
down a different
Yeah, exactly. So,
different.
but this is important. But this is a huge topic, and I think you guys are onto something, and we do need our payment
Yeah.
platform, inshallah. And
Well, I
then,
mean, just to kind of close a note on that, I mean, ultimately, like our goal is to be global. First, we start out in the U.S.,
mhm,
Canada, UK, etc. You establish yourself there, but there are so many Muslims who today, whether it's PayPal or others, just struggle to use those systems. And
yeah,
when we saw this in terms of accounts being closed down, whether it's Wise or others, so there obviously is an opportunity to be able to showcase our KYC as the best KYCs, like know your customer, being able to do our due diligence. And we already do that in house. We do all of our compliance in house,
mhm,
but there is an opportunity to even rebuild the way compliance is being done now because we understand the nuance of our community better than anyone else. We understand what's a legitimate charity versus a money laundering effort. That this name is
interesting.
not the same as this name in terms of like false positives. For a lot of banks and providers, it's like this is too much work. It's too much work for
Mhm.
me. Do you know what's the uh most popular name on sanctions list and match list?
Uh, Muhammad.
Muhammad, okay?
It's
Second
also
by
the most popular name in
followed
the
by
world.
Vlad, yeah, followed by Vladimir. And so you
Right,
have
right.
You have this whole system that
Stereotypes,
is
huh? Stereotypes.
yeah, so it's very frustrating, and we all have common names, and that's a lot of work for banks and to remediate that. So I do believe that we can build a global compliance infrastructure that is a lot more nuanced and is able to factor in our community in a way that the existing systems don't. Because then you throw AI into it, right? And of course,
Mm,
you've got layers of layers of layers. AI doesn't necessarily mean it's going to make it better. It could actually make it worse. So there's an opportunity there, I think, that's ripe for
absolutely.
disruption. How we do compliance.
I am excited about this, especially the payment platform. Tell me, like, what can you tell us? Like, when you guys plan to launch it? Can you tell us the name? Whatever you can share, just share with us.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
excited.
still we're still looking for the right partners. Like we're in conversations right now with partners, inshallah, to set it up. I mean, what I can say is we're working on becoming a payment facilitator in the U.S. Like we believe
Okay.
that might be our first entry point because you have to do this on a country by country level in
I
terms
see.
of the licensing and whatnot. So that's where we'll start. But there's still a lot of details that we're ironing out. What I
I
will
see.
say is, and I'm saying this publicly, like to hold myself accountable to it, but our goal is to process our first dollar before the end of the year, inshallah. Like that
Inshallah.
is something
Okay.
that we're trying to move forward on. We're not going to have it all figured out, but the idea is to move, get into the space, understand
Mhm.
it better, start somewhere, right?
Mhm.
Move up the payments food chain. Ultimately, Maruf, I think the final end goal for us as a community is to become a bank. And if we can become a bank, banks in America at least, they get the final say when it comes to who they can onboard in terms
Mhm.
of what businesses, what merchants, who they underwrite. And so the closest you can get to that is working with a bank,
I see.
like in a very sort of close manner. Because all of payments is layers. It's
It's
layers. And
true.
sometimes with all those layers, you end up being here and you want to get to that point where you're as closest to the
So you,
decision
so you,
maker.
so you, so you want to cover as much as you can, right, from that layer.
Yeah, you want to get to the point
You want
where
all,
like
yeah.
yeah, you want to get to that point where you're as closest as possible to the final decision maker. If you can't
Mhm.
be the final decision maker yourself, which
Mhm.
and that would be like becoming a bank essentially.
Yes, I see. I see. So yeah, we went along with tangent, but it is important. It's so crucial topic for the ummah, right? And I think
Yeah.
it's a pain point. So may Allah reward you guys. So I think, I think like with your new role and how things are moving on, we discussed that. Tell me what else is, how do you guys see the launch good community and the sub products in the future? And either any other questions I should have asked, I did not ask. I'm going to be mindful of your time. I told you only 1 hour, so I'm going to keep it to 1 hour. Tell me, like, is there anything you want to mention? I might have, I'm going to ask the question. That would be a good time to discuss those, the last 5, 10 minutes, inshallah.
Yeah, I would say even like Launch Good Core itself
Mhm.
is going through a transformation, right? In terms of like what's next. I mean, we've been
Mhm.
the premier crowdfunding platform for the Muslim community, but I we want to be the premier fundraising platform. So part of that is expanding beyond what we do today,
Mhm.
beyond what we have now, which is you can come to Launch Good as a donor, which is exciting. Like you can discover projects and campaigns. You can give, month, weekly. You can give daily, etc. But for our campaigns, we want to even do more, right?
Mhm.
Being able to uh, essentially develop LaunchGood into your end all solution for all your fundraising needs. I know that's something that we're exploring in terms of on the horizon, and it works well with the payments company piece
Yeah,
because
yeah,
most
absolutely.
most nonprofits they want a whole solution, right? If they're going to have payments and a CRM and being able to create campaigns by their favorite donors and
Mhm.
volunteers. So it's almost like complementary models together when you think about how do you build an ecosystem. We're looking at all the different pieces, payments to infrastructure to what do donors want to see to discovery to that virtual mall. All of that I see it as actually connected, and all
Inshallah.
of it together is really about uplifting the ummah.
Beautiful. Sounds good. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for sharing your story, Amani. And I mean, when we look at the launch group the last 10, 11 years, alhamdulillah, it's been really beautiful project. I know you guys for a while. I've been following it. And alhamdulillah, by the time, at least as you mentioned earlier as well, by now the community have seen at least $500 million, right, through the platform has been, and that's a quite achievement. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless this and give you even more. and may Allah bless your team, and then give tawfiq. And so we would expect to see the next, as you said, next upcoming projects, next upcoming products, right? That's going to uplift the
Yeah.
ummah. That's still keeping that vision. And then moving forward, I think there are so many opportunities. And I think one of the things, to be honest, I really want to see, not only for LaunchGood, for any Muslim companies and entrepreneurs out there who's listening, who's watching this. My goal has shifted the last, I would say, 3-4 years. Is that before, like, hey, I want to be the builds, and now it's more like how can we do that together, right? Instead
Yeah.
of trying to on your own. Like, this is what I see on LaunchGood as well, right? You guys have this motto, and I love that as well. And I think this is what I'm saying, especially what's going on the media right now.
So it's so
It's
important to
become
have our own platform. Yeah, now more than
it's
ever.
become more apparent that the only way forward is together, right? It's not more anymore words. Words doesn't help. We have to take action, whatever it is, whatever the shape or form, and that's the only way we can stand together and grow stronger. And the last part is that book, as I say, is like, in the end, we have to be a strong community, not because of the power, right? Power belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but the way we want to be strong, because when you're strong, you don't have to beg for mercy, right? People begin to respect you, and people are think twice before they mess with you, right? So right now, as you need, what's going on? It's like, unfortunately, we have to admit it's not the best position we want to be. But I think each of us now, we're taking action. We have to take action. We have to do something, and hopefully, probably in the coming years, that situation changes, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives strength to ummah. And to do that, we have to change ourselves first, of course, and that we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala strength. So it changed the condition. I think we have the quantity, but we just want to work on the quality, you know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, again, this is again why it's so important to build our own platforms, to have our own
Sure.
platform, support each other's platforms.
That's true.
And I think for a lot of people, like this, the events that are happening really essentially just crystallize that even more.
That's
Like if
true.
you weren't, it's gotten people to change their career focus. It's gotten people to have deeper conversations. And subhanAllah, like I do think it's a catalyst to a greater good. And, it
Inshallah.
could be that you hate something, there's actually a lot of good in it. And I think there will be a lot of good that will emerge. And we're seeing that even today.
Inshallah. Amani, thank you so much for your time. I know it's not easy. I know that your son is gonna miss you soon, so I'm gonna let you go. Before you go, tell us where people can follow you or can follow LaunchGood. Where do you want people follow you guys or connect with you to learn more, to follow and get to know more about you and your project, LaunchGood, everything?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, LaunchGood's on every single platform, whatever,
Mhm.
X, Instagram, wherever you follow. I'm an old soul. I'm only on LinkedIn. I
That's
I
good.
am on X. I am on Instagram, but I don't really check them that much. So
Yeah.
if you want to see what the lab C might be up to, you can follow me on LinkedIn in terms of the latest projects we might be building.
We'll share the
Inshallah. But
links. We'll share the links on the podcast episode as well. Inshallah.
that's probably one of the best ways to get in touch.
Okay. Thanks so much. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Take care, madam.